I should have known something was wrong the moment the wind shifted, carrying not the clean scent of pine and cold water, but the thump of buzz that did not belong anywhere near my grandparents' lake. I had come here to breathe again after a brutal month, after too many late nights and too many people asking for too much. I needed quiet. Instead, I rolled down the gravel road and felt my stomach knot. That pounding music grew louder with every turn. By the time the lake house came into view, any hope of peace was already gone. My name is Marin, and the lake house is the only place that has ever felt like mine. The porch, once a sanctuary of chipped white paint and mismatched rocking chairs, was packed with strangers. Not just a few, a whole crowd. Loud, laughing, drinking, tossing their feet up on my grandparents' railings like it was a beach shack they had booked for a holiday. My headlight swept across the yard and caught someone doing cartwheels near my grandmother's bird feeder. The sight made something inside me twist. A low ache sharpened by disbelief. For a moment I stayed in the car, gripping the steering wheel and trying to make sense of it. Childhood memories flickered like sunlight on the water. My grandfather's patient voice teaching me how to cast a line. My grandmother's hands guiding mine as we hammered a new plank onto the dock. Their laughter echoing across the lake on long summer evenings. This place was theirs. Then it became mine. And seeing it like this felt like watching someone walk across a grave. When I stepped out of the car, a few of the strangers glanced my way, but only one person came forward with any certainty. My cousin's wife, Lila. I barely knew her, and what I did know had never given me comfort. She smoked a perfume heavy enough to mask the lake breeze, and her smile had the shape of a dare. "Well, look who finally showed up," she said, tilting her head like she was humoring a child. The princess herself. I did not rise to it. I was too busy trying to understand how she had even gotten inside. "Lila, what is going on here? Why are all these people at my house?" she laughed. A high, sharp sound that drew her friends closer. "Your house? Oh, sweetheart, no. You do not own this anymore. My husband and I do now. Marriage changes family dynamics. I am sure you understand." My pulse kicked, but I kept my voice steady. "I have the deed, Lila." She waved a hand at me as if brushing away an insect. "Do not be dramatic. Everyone knows you cannot handle this place alone, so we stepped in, upgraded it. You are welcome." Behind her, someone knocked over a table, sending my grandmother's old ceramic vase shattering across the porch. The group cheered as if it were a party trick. I felt the first sting of anger climb my throat, but I held it down. I reminded myself I had not come here to fight. I had come here for quiet. It was laughable now, but I still clung to the idea of peace, even if it was slipping further from reach with every passing second. I took a step toward the doorway, but Lila moved in front of me, planting herself like a guard. "You cannot go in. You are not on the guest list," her friends snickered. One of them whispered something about me being entitled. Another called me irrelevant. For a heartbeat, humiliation burned through me so fiercely I almost turned around and left. But then something steadier rose, something older than embarrassment. I knew something Lila did not, something she would not understand until it was far too late. I met her eyes and let my voice fall into a calm she mistook for surrender. "Lila," I said softly, "you are making a mistake." She threw her head back and laughed. "The only mistake here is you thinking you matter." I did not respond. I simply stepped back, pulled out my phone, and walked toward the tree line where the music faded enough for a call to go through. When the line clicked, I spoke quietly, my eyes still on the porch and the woman claiming control over what was never hers. "It is happening sooner than I thought." I walked the old lake path the next morning, forcing my breathing into something steady as the sun rose through the trees. The air tasted the same as it did when I was little, cool and earthy, with that faint hint of moss that always made my grandmother smile. She used to say the lake could hear everything, that it listened even when the people around me did not. My grandfather had taught me how to track the seasons by the way the wind moved through the leaves, slow in early spring and sharper as summer settled in. They were quiet teachers, patient teachers, and I felt their lessons in my bones as I followed the familiar curve of the shoreline. It helped me remember who I was before Lila's voice tried to twist something sacred out of shape. but the sting of her words still lingered. Her claiming the house felt like a hand clamping down on my throat. The idea of her standing on the steps where my grandparents used to wave to me, announcing ownership as if she had earned even a fraction of the history built into the wood, made my fists curl. I tried to shake it off, reminding myself that anger rarely wins the real battles. Patience, my grandfather said, is the sharpest tool you will ever hold. Wait until the moment is yours. By midday, I returned to the house, determined only to retrieve the bag I had left inside. I wanted space, not a fight. But the porch looked even worse than before. Someone had dragged my grandfather's old toolbox across the boards, leaving scratch marks like deep claw tracks. When I stepped up the stairs, Lila appeared in the doorway with a mug in her hand and triumph in her eyes. "Oh, look," she said, "the trespasser came back." "I am here for my things," I answered, keeping my voice level. "Then I will be gone." "Well, you missed your chance. I already cleaned out the clutter." She pointed toward the shed with a casual flick. "All that old junk your grandfather left. I moved it. I need the space for my remodeling plans. This house is going to be unrecognizable when I'm done with it." A wave of heat rushed through me, but I did not let it rise high enough to burn my face. "You cannot remodel what you do not own." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. "Keep talking like that, and I will call the sheriff. You set foot in this house again, and I will make sure they drag you off the property." I met her eyes and let silence answer. It unsettled her for a moment, enough for her smile to falter. That single crack gave me a small spark of satisfaction. I told her I had already contacted someone about the situation, but I did not say who. Her brows knitted, suspicion mixing with arrogance, and she puffed herself up again. She ranted while I picked up my bag near the doorway, calling me unstable, selfish, dramatic. When she noticed the framed photo of my grandparents and me, she grabbed it and hurled it into the yard. Glass shattered against the stones. Something inside me tightened so hard it felt like a held breath ready to split in two. But timing mattered more than pride. While she raged, I lifted my phone and began recording her, keeping my expression blank as her insults grew sharper and louder. She did not notice. She was too busy hearing her own voice. When she finally paused to inhale, I stepped back, kept the camera pointed down, and whispered to myself so quietly no one else could hear. Almost. The family group chat lit up before I even made it back to my car. I felt the vibration in my pocket and knew, without looking, that someone had already told their version of the story. By the time I opened the thread, my cousin Evan had jumped in first, siding with Lila in a tone so smug I could practically hear it. He wrote that everyone always assumed the lake house would pass to the married couples in the family someday, that I had misunderstood the spirit of the inheritance, as if spirit mattered more than the deed with my name written on it. I stared at the screen, feeling the familiar pinch of being brushed aside. It was the same sensation I had felt at every holiday gathering, when my accomplishments were treated like footnotes, while Evan's slightest effort was praised like brilliance. I had spent my entire life watching this family elevate the loudest voices and overlook the steady ones. Part of me had always suspected a day like this would come, when their entitlement would collide with my quiet ownership of something they wanted. Still, the speed of their certainty stunned me. Lila followed Evan's message with a long paragraph dripping with accusation. She called me greedy for hoarding the lake house. She called me unstable for storming around the property. She insisted that she and Evan were only doing what was best for the family legacy. Each sentence felt like a shove, but I forced myself to breathe through it. Anger rarely moved me, but it simmered now, slow and steady, gaining shape. That evening, I sat on the end of the dock while the sun folded itself into the lake. The water was glassy and still, catching streaks of gold in a way that made the chaos on the porch feel unreal. I tried to let the calm sink into me the way it always had, but the storm inside me pressed harder, twisting beneath my ribs. I wanted to act. I wanted to strike back, but I could hear my grandfather's voice in the back of my mind. Patience sharpens the blade. Timing makes the cut. So I prepared instead. I gathered every document I had, sorted them into neat stacks, and scanned them onto my laptop. I photographed every scratch on the porch and every item she had moved. I recorded timestamps, labels, and damage descriptions. The work steadied me. Each careful step was its own promise. I sent the digital files to my lawyer without commentary, and he replied with a simple confirmation. It was enough. Meanwhile, Lila kept sending messages, one after another, each more taunting than the last. She wrote that the house finally belonged to people who knew how to use it. She wrote that I had always been too timid to handle responsibility. She wrote that once she was done with her remodel, the place would be unrecognizable, and maybe that was for the best. Every word was a spark. I let them pile up. Sparks only matter when they meet fuel. As twilight settled across the trees, I walked back up to the porch with a folder in my hand. She saw me coming and straightened, her expression eager for another fight. Her friends quieted as I stepped onto the top stair. She narrowed her eyes. "What is that supposed to be?" she demanded. I held the folder against my side, calm and steady. "You should see what patience looks like." She laughed in my face, loud and sharp, certain she still had the upper hand. She had no idea how close the fire was. My lawyer arrived the next morning just as the fog was lifting off the lake. The soft light made the porch look almost peaceful, though I knew better. When his car pulled up, Lila was on the steps holding a mug that probably belonged to my grandmother. She froze when she saw him step out in his pressed suit, carrying a leather briefcase like this was a boardroom instead of a porch stained with spilled beer. "Who is that?" she demanded, though she already knew. "My lawyer," I said, keeping my tone even. "He asked to come in person." Her smile was instant but strained, the kind someone wears when an audience appears. "Well, he is wasting his time. There is nothing to discuss. This is our property, and we have already started making plans." My lawyer, Mr. Ellery, greeted her politely and asked if she could gather Evan. She crossed her arms and refused, saying he was busy and that any conversation could be handled through her. Ellery nodded once, not bothered in the slightest, and opened his briefcase. The crisp click of the latch made her flinch. I watched the small crack in her confidence widen, just enough for the first draft of fear to slip in. "Mrs. Warren," he said calmly, "I want to start by confirming that you believe this property belongs to you." "It does," she snapped, lifting her chin. "Everyone knows that. Marriage shifts things. The house is part of our family future." "Excellent," he replied. "Then you will have no trouble citing the document that grants you ownership." Her mouth opened but no words formed. She blinked twice, then tried to bulldoze past it with volume. She said something about implied inheritance, about tradition, about how she and Evan had already taken responsibility for the place. Ellery listened without expression and then repeated his question, slower this time. "What document grants you ownership?" She turned red, sputtering with the effort to maintain control. She insulted him, accused me of manipulation, and waved her mug as if it were a judge's gavel. When she finally ran out of steam, Ellery began speaking with quiet precision. He outlined the deed, naming me as the sole owner. He read the section of the will where my grandparents explicitly passed the house to me and only me. He explained the protective clauses they added, the ones preventing disputes from extended family members. With each detail, her posture slumped a little more, though she tried to recover with weak interruptions. Then Ellery took out his phone and played her own recorded words. Her voice filled the porch, loud and sharp, claiming ownership and threatening to have me removed from the property. Her friends who had gathered in the doorway stared at her with wide eyes. Even the wind seemed to hush itself. When the recording ended, Ellery tucked the phone away and said, "Given the situation, there will be serious consequences." Her eyes flicked between us, searching for certainty and finding none. "You are bluffing," she said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "You cannot do anything. You do not have the nerve." I met her stare and held it without speaking until she looked away first. The silence stretched between us, heavy and deliberate, and she shifted her weight like she wanted to run but could not justify moving. Finally, I turned toward the steps, my voice steady and quiet, carrying more weight than any threat could. "Tomorrow." Early the next morning, the lake was still wrapped in pale mist when the first police car rolled down the gravel drive. The quiet crunch of tires on stone felt almost ceremonial, like the world itself had decided it was time to end this. I stood at the porch railing, calm in a way that felt carved from something older than anger. When the second car arrived, and then the unmarked vehicle behind it, the music inside the house abruptly stopped. Lila stepped onto the porch with a forced smile, wearing the shaken confidence of someone who knew the story was no longer under her control. The officers asked for her by name. Her friends, half-dressed and bleary-eyed, scattered across the yard like startled birds. One of them paused to ask what was happening, but when the officers held out the stack of documents, he backed away without another word. Lila tried to gather herself, adjusting her shirt and smoothing her hair, as if neatness could restore authority. She demanded to know why law enforcement was on her property. But the officer closest to her simply handed her the first packet, a trespass notice addressed directly to her. Her eyes skimmed the page and then snapped up to me with a thin, furious tremble. Before she could speak, the officer handed her the second packet, the one listing the items she had removed without permission. Her face went gray around the edges. When the injunction arrived, barring her from stepping onto the land again, she let out a small sound that was halfway between a gasp and a denial. She pulled out her phone to call Evan, pacing across the porch as she waited for him to answer. When he finally picked up, she sputtered accusations and begged him to fix it. But whatever he said drained what little fight she had left. She listened in stunned silence while the officers waited patiently. By the time the call ended, her hand was shaking. She did not tell us what he said, but the truth was written all over her. Evan was facing his own legal trouble now, and he was not coming to save her. My lawyer, Ellery, stepped forward then. His voice was steady, carrying none of the anger she had tried to provoke over the past days. He explained every charge she was facing, each violation, each act of trespass, each damaged item, each false claim made in writing or on record. He detailed the inheritance protections she had trampled over and the state laws she had broken with her threats and her attempted takeover. Her friends stood behind the officers, silent and wide-eyed, watching her unravel in real time. By the time Ellery finished, her confidence had collapsed completely. She clutched the stack of legal documents with both hands, her knuckles bone white. She tried one last plea, a quiet, desperate insistence that she had not meant any harm. But no one was listening anymore. The officers guided her toward the driveway, giving her time to gather what little dignity she had left. She did not look back at me. She could not. I stood on the porch she had tried to claim, steady and silent, as they escorted her off the property for the last time. It felt like a door slamming shut inside me. Not rage, not triumph. Something deeper, something final. That evening, when the sun began to settle in streaks of orange across the lake, I walked down to the dock. The water moved in slow ripples, as if the chaos of the past days had never touched it. I sat there, letting the stillness settle into me. Betrayal, I realized, never appears where you expect it. It grows in the blind spots, in the thin spaces between trust and assumption. Some people only show their true nature when they think they can seize what they did not earn. Revenge had never been the goal. Clarity was. Every wound teaches something if you let it. And every confrontation becomes a line in the sand between who you were and who you decide to be moving forward. The lake held the reflection of the fading sun, quiet and endless. And for the first time in a long while, I felt completely and unmistakably free.